All right, we're ready for the exciting panel. So we know the Rambam, he wrote the Mishnah Torah, it's a book of halacha. The Rambam was also a doctor, as we saw in the show. So the Rambam had these two sides. Very interesting, in the Sefer, in the first Sefer of the Rambam, Hilchos Deos, the Rambam has a whole section about health. And the Rambam personally guarantees that someone who acts and conducts his life according to all what the Rambam advises, he says that he won't become sick and will be healthy all the days of his life. So we see already in the beginning in the Rambam, Hilchos Deos, he's talking about how to be a healthy person, both b'deya in your knowledge and being a full person, healthy physically in both aspects. It's interesting to compare the two sides of the Rambam, the halacha part and the medical part. I just saw a very interesting video today where someone comes over to the Rebbe with a book, a medical book of the Rambam that was recently printed. And the Rebbe mentioned that if you look very closely, recently in the Cairo Geniza and other things that were revealed, Rabbi Zalman Schachter was involved a lot in the Cairo Geniza, and there's different signatures of the Rambam that were found. And the Rebbe noticed that in the signature when it comes to a halacha book is different than the way the Rambam signed in a medical book. And that's a study for itself, where you could kind of see that in halacha book, each letter of the Rambam's name is very precise and there's a space between them. But when it comes to medical or other things, the letters are more connected, and sometimes it's even all together, all as one. So without further ado, we're very excited to hear from Rabbi Schachter, who's going to tell us about the Rambam as a physician and a doctor. And thank you, Rabbi Schachter.
Hi, Shalom. It's good to be here with you. So Dr. Rambam. The Rambam in the Shmone Prakim is his introduction in the Parashat Mishnayos to Pirkei Avos. And then in the introduction to Pirkei Avos, he wants to tell us about what he calls the science of moral medicine. He says that morality and human conduct should not be thought of so much as law, and really that halacha is not so much as law, but also a science of medicine. And as someone who's misbehaving, if we look at them as a Russia that needs to be reprimanded and controlled and disciplined, that you're not really going to help them. You might reprimand them and control them and discipline them, but you're not going to heal them. And that in order to really help somebody, what they need is a moral physician. And that people who are behaving wickedly, it's because they're morally ill. The moral illness. And if we look at our world today, you can see Nebuch, what a morally ill world we have. And it changes the whole way we think about wickedness when you think about it as illness. Because then instead of condemnation, you have compassion. Instead of looking at someone who's behaving in a way which is hurtful to others and saying, oh, they're terrible, we need to condemn them, lock them up, ostracize them, point a finger, say bad. These are people who are suffering greatly, and nobody really sins, nobody misbehaves unless they're suffering deep inside, and we have to find a way to help them, to rescue them from their moral illness. And so he goes on to describe how all of the moral traits are a pendulum, right? That they have a scale. For example, he brings courage. That real courage is somewhere between cowardice and being foolhardy. And that being unafraid and rushing head into danger, that's not righteous, and neither is being a coward. And that there's somewhere in between. You have to find the equilibrium, and that the moral health and the meat of courage is to be able to have just the right balance, to be able to not take an unnecessary risk, and also not to be so risk averse that you don't do what needs to be done when the opportunity presents itself. And the same goes with other midot, other traits. You have to find this right balance. And the difficulty comes is that people sometimes have a picture of what they think the right balance looks like, but their right balance point, what they're aspiring towards, that's a good courage, might not be quite right. And so how do you find the right thing to aspire to? It's not so much how good are you doing at achieving what you aspire to. That's one level. That's important. But you have a much deeper problem if what you're aspiring to itself is sickness. If you're aspiring to a picture of this is what Metukan Midos looks like, but your picture's all wrong, the better you're doing at achieving it, the worse off you're going to be. And so what you have is, what you really need is a soul doctor. A doctor of morality who can come and show you that this is the real picture of what health is. This is the real picture of moral health. And from where do we have such a thing? Because then we can get to argue about this. I think this is a better picture of moral health. You think that's a big picture of mental health. We get all kinds of different pictures. That's what they call today, all of the moral debates, they call moral subjectivity. There's a fancy word for it I'm not remembering. But no, the Torah has a picture of what humanity is meant to be. The Eitz HaChaim, that's not Eitz Das Tov Raz, not this is good and this is bad. No, this is Kol HaChai. When David HaMelech meets people in the Tanakh, he says, Kol HaChai, this is how to live. This is how to live. This is life. And so the Torah comes to teach us the picture of what real life is, real, moral health, and to give us the guidance to what should we aspire. To what should we aspire? What should be our picture of what it looks like to really be a mensch, to be morally healthy, to have a picture of a society, and which we saw that there'll be a society where from top to bottom, from when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed at night and everything in between with the cycles of the year, that all of the various areas of life are integrated into this picture of what a perfect world could look like, where there won't be hunger and there won't be tacharut and there won't be kina and there won't be sinah and there won't be hatred and there won't be violence. Because all of us have the right vision to aspire to. And so when we look in the Rambam, that's what he's given us is the moral medicine of calibrating our moral compass. Let me show you to what's the real picture of good moral health, of good moral hygiene, of how to take care of yourself. This is what we should be aspiring to. And when we look at that, when we can come and each person knows their own sickness, each person knows their own pain and their own ways that they're suffering, and so we have to do our work to get ourselves. But at least now we know to what to aspire. At least we have a picture of tzidkus, of moral health, of physical health, of spiritual health, of all the different ways that we need to be working on ourselves to develop, and a picture of what that can look like. And it can be very difficult when you learn in the Rambam or learn things that you look at yourself and you look at this and say, how could I ever achieve such a thing? The point is not always to get you from here to there. For that we have Chassidus, we've got Musar, we've got all kinds of stuff. But to have the picture of, this is, if you did everything right, what would it look like? If you followed every step of the halacha, if you did everything perfectly, if you had just the right calibration of all the moral midot, and they were aligned correctly with Hashem's vision for a Metukan planet, what would it look like? This the Rambam come to give us. And so, as we continue to recycle, learning through the Rambam, to calibrate our vision for what the world could look like, to align ourselves to be really aspiring to contribute to a world that doesn't have hunger or pain or strife and war and violence, suffering, and to be really aligned in our moral compass with the Torah, bepratu beklal, right, the big picture and with the little details of our lives, to really be morally aligned according to Dr. Rambam's moral prescriptions. Mazel tov, mazel tov. It should be a good cycle for everyone involved.
Thank you, Rabbi Schachter, for bringing out the moral medicine in the Shemona Prakim and the Rambam. We know the world stands on three pillars. There's Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. So we have here three speakers. I looked at the different themes. It seems like it lines up. We started off with Gemilas Chasadim, between Ben Adam and Chavera, between one person and another, the moral medicine. Now we're going to move on to the other theme, the Avodah, the part of connection to Hashem. And we're very excited to hear from Rabbi Oken about the connection to Hashem through the study of Rambam. Thank you, Rabbi Oken. This one is better.
I have to speak with both of them? So I wasn't actually trained how to use a mic, so I'm going to pretend it's not here. But thank you very much for it anyway. In the Rambam and Perek Tes of Hilchos Tshuva, there's a piece that I think is particularly timely and is something that we should reflect upon, specifically with what Eretz Yisrael is going through in an unprecedented experience. Near the end of Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam is discussing his philosophy as to how we are supposed to connect to the Almighty. And before a person were to think about doing tshuva, it's what are we returning towards? Literally, the word tshuva means to return. So that implies that there is a starting point and a destination that are not close to each other, that there's a divide that needs to be bridged. So in Perek Tes, the Rambam is describing the ideal destination for Klal Yisrael and for the individual. And that is Yemos HaMashiach. That's the time when Mashiach comes. As the Navi beautifully says, Lo yisa goy al goy acherev, lo yodu od milchama. Right? A world of peace. But the Rambam explains what about peace makes it a desired destination to which we should seek. And the way the Rambam explains it is that the goal of Yemos HaMashiach is Kedei she'anuchu mimalchus harsha, that we should be relieved and we should have the space from the evil kingdoms. She'eno menachas lahen liyisrael lasok batorah v'mitzvos kahogen, that do not allow the Jewish people to learn and to keep the mitzvos in the proper way. The goal is through having the time and the space and the lack of pressure to be able to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through our learning and through our avodas Hashem, that's the destination to which we're ascribing to. It's not a world, that was cool. It's not a world where we have the benefit and the time and the space to not have the pressure and the persecution, but it's for having the opportunity to connect to the Almighty. A short while later, in Perek 10, Perek Yud of Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam says, and what is the state of being that we should have in that connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And he describes it as being a focus, a connection, that like a man to a woman, where that's all that consumes the two people involved. A sense of Avas Hashem, a sense of pleasure that this is where we want to be. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us the Siyata Dishmaya through our Limud HaTorah, specifically through our Limud HaRambam, to be able to get one step closer to achieving that in our days.
Thank you, Rabbi Oken. Yeah, may we merit to be in this time that we won't have any worries. Sometimes we're thinking about the schar, we're looking for a reward, but we just need to take away the distractions. There's so many things that get in the way of what we really want to do. And the Rambam is really telling us that removing all the distractions, that itself allows us to connect to Hashem and study Torah. Before we move on to the last and final speaker, we're going to play a video about the Rambam.
The Shliach, it's not 9 to 5, it's from early morning to late at night, and it's at any time. And if they ever really wants me to read through properly, I should really be trying to do that. So, I remember Rosh Hashanah, I came home and it was late at night, and I was probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I was standing, walking around, holding the Rambam to make sure I don't fall asleep, because I knew if I sit down on the couch, it's going to be at school at the falling asleep really quickly. It was like 3 days before we Kippur, I said to my wife, I feel like I'm probably not able to keep up with this. I feel like maybe this is just not for me. I was disappointed to say that, but that's what I thought. That's how I felt. The next morning, I'm in my car, stop by Sam's Club to pick up some things we need, and I get a phone call from a lady who says, "Hi, Rabbi. Her name is Wendy. She tells me that she has something that she wants to give me." I said, what it is? She said, it's $1. $1? She said, yeah, it's got some Hebrew writing on it. I came over to Wendy's house. She tells me, Rabbi, you need to know how I got this. It's so unusual. We had an event and we had these contributions come in, and I'm very particular about preparing the money for the deposit. I turn all the bills face up. And on my third time going through the bills, I noticed one was the other way, which to her, being so particular, was like struck that as really odd.
I work with Meridian Investment Sales. I sell commercial real estate in New York. Last year, around 2 weeks before the Siyum HoRambam, Rabbi Shmuel Bookman came to our shul, and during the Kiddush, he fabricated with us, telling us how important the study of Rambam was and is to the Rebbe.
The Rebbe says that you should do it to the simcha of Tu Livov, and the Rebbe says that this will bring about the Yom Hashem, the coming of Moshiach.
I decided to start learning 3 parts of Rambam 3 days before the scene to show that there was going to be a real commitment. I had a good run, and I was keeping up for approximately 3 to 4 weeks before Labor Day when I started falling behind. And once you start falling behind the 3 parts of Rambam, it's a lot of trucking to catch up. I was thinking to myself, me being someone who wants to have a connection and be connected to the Rebbe, how is it that I cannot learn 3 parts of Rambam every day?
You didn't learn yesterday? That's a separate story. But you can start today, and you can, from now on, you can learn 1 Pele, 3 Brakim, and you can be part of all of those who are learning Rambam.
It was the day before Labor Day, and my 10-year-old son was insisting to bring him and his friends to the Yankee game. I decided I'll take him to the Yankee game, and I'll have time on the train at the game and the train home. So I thought that this was an opportunity to have 6 hours straight of Rambam. So the next day, I took my son to the Yankee game, and I learned Rambam for literally 6 hours straight, and did catch up a lot.
The Siyum HoRambam Tafshin Elov. It was the second Siyum HoRambam, and there was a lot of excitement about it. And the suggestion was that we should ask the Rebbe for participation with $1 for each person that will come.
Der Rebbe hat zugeschickt, $1 bei jedem Themen und denen von dem Stattfinden und Stattfest bei der heutigen Siyum.
Now we asked the Rebbe for the Rebbe's Ishtatfus, but we didn't say how much money we want. The Rebbe himself sent out $6,000. We saw here that the Rebbe himself wants the Siyum to be B'Hatzlocha, and this is why he's sending out the money.
Und jetzt Hashem, wir noch Bestimmung, der Rebbe soll zu allen an Siyum von dem Siyum. Ayashakeh.
And the Rosh Hashanah, who was in charge of distributing the dollars, told me later there were 6,000 people who attended. 6,000 people, exactly the way that Rebbe saw. What we heard over years, that those dollars went a long way.
She shows me the dollar, and I couldn't wait to see what it says on it. And this is what it says. I keep the dollar on me at all times. It's in my wallet. It says on it, "Shtatlich hagigos yimar matzah sheni heitach memor mitpoid kedushas ad mishlutim milabavich." Here I thought to myself, here I am in Greek City, a place with not a very big Jewish population, and here I'm getting $1 from the Rebbe. I felt this was a clearly real shaka practice to receive this, and it was a message that said, I know what you're doing, it's good, the women around don't stop, it's important, stick to it, keep at it.
Around an hour after I came home, my mother sends me a WhatsApp. Look, Rupa, I found $2 in the Rebbe years. I opened the picture to see when these dollars were from. First dollar said Rambam Siyum 1986. The second dollar was written True Rosh Hashanah February 1986. It was an extremely special feeling to receive these dollars. I told over the story to a number of friends of mine who, being good, cynical amateurs, were joking and making sarcastic jokes of how Lipa, you always have these stories, and here's another story from Lipa. Being that Baruch Hashem, I saw a number of stories like this in the revealed way, and it got me thinking and questioning whether or not I was exaggerating, if I am making more of it than it really is. A few days later, my mother came to babysit by us, and as she walked in the door, she said, "Oh, Lipa, look, I found another dollar of yours." I took one look at the dollar, and I knew exactly what the message was. Because that dollar was dated Chetzelo, which last year was September 4th, the day before Labor Day, the day I bought the Yankee tickets, making the commitment to spend 6 hours learning Rambam and catching up on the Rambam.
Don't see yourself as just one more person. There are thousands and thousands of people who are doing Rambam daily, but it matters whether you're doing it or not. And it matters both to the bigger picture, but also for yourself.
And you can be part of all the schuyas and all the good things that are going to come your way by starting to learn the Rambam every day.
And I am happy to say that this year was the first time that I completed the whole Rambam.
All right, for the last and final speaker, we're going to hear about how the study of Rambam transforms and changes the world. We know the famous halacha in Rambam that everyone should view the whole world as on a scale, and every mitzvah that you do could tilt the scale for the good and could bring salvation for the whole world. So every mitzvah that we do, especially studying Rambam itself, transforms the world. And we'll hear more from Rabbi Greenberg. Thank you, Rabbi Greenberg.
First of all, Yasher Koach to the organizers who made this very beautiful Siyum and has put Buffalo on the map of Siyumim. As we heard before, the first Siyum happened here in Buffalo, and the Rebbe acknowledged it in more than one way. So this is a very special event that we're coming together to celebrate the Siyum HoRambam. The Rebbe instituted the Siyum HoRambam, the learning of Rambam, and the Siyum HoRambam as a way of bringing Geula Shlema. There's no question that the Rebbe considered the learning of Rambam to be a direct cause that will bring about the Geula Shlema. So what is it so special about the Rambam? So first of all, the Rebbe emphasized the importance of Achdus, that by having all the Jewish people coming together, learning one subject of Torah, that's the greatest idea of Achdus, which brings Geula. But what's so special about Rambam? There's Bavli, there's Yerushalmi. So why is Rambam so unique? So the Rebbe explained that the Rambam is the only work that consolidates, it combines all halachas of Torah. You don't have any other sefer that you can fulfill the requirement in Shulchan Aruch about learning Kol HaTorah Kula. So by learning Rambam, you're learning Kol HaTorah Kula, and you're learning it together with everyone else. So that's the power that brings Geula. I want to just go a little bit deeper into this. But first of all, the significance of the Rambam, of the Mishnah Torah, is that it represents the Achdus of Torah. It brings together all of Torah. And it brings together all of Torah in a way where you don't see machlokes. The Rambam doesn't bring dissenting views. The Rambam explains things in a very lucid language. The Rambam in his introduction writes, it's lekatan begadol, it's intended for young and old chronologically, young and old in terms of knowledge. The Rambam was written for everyone. So it unifies people in ways that other types of learning cannot unify because they're not equal to everyone. Everything is hinted in the Torah. I think it's a very powerful when you see that the Rambam, it seems to allude to something. I notice this every year when we learn the Rambam in his Hakdama and also in other parts of the Rambam, when he refers to Bavel, the source of Talmud Bavli, he refers to it Be'eretz Shinar, the land of Shinar. Now if you look at Chumash, Shinar was the name of the place where the people gathered to build the Tower of Bavel. And then, because they tried to fight against Hashem, God confused them, and that's where the word Bavel comes from. The Rambam in his Hakdama, in his introduction, and other places as well, refers to the Talmud of Shinar, instead of just calling it the Talmud of Bavel. So it seems that the Rambam is trying to tell us and hinting to us that there's something special about his work, that it's somehow compared to what happened in Shinar. Everything that we have in Kedusha, in holiness, we have in the other side as well. Zel u'ma zel asol likim, King Solomon says. God created this versus that. What happened in Shinar? People came together for a cause, a unified cause. This is the most unified project in all of human history, where the entire world gets together to build this city and this tower. Now, the word Shinar itself, and we're going to use a little gematria here to spice things up. The word Shinar itself numerically adds up to 620, which is the gematria of Keser. If you want to describe halacha, the way the Gemara in Megillah describes halacha, not theoretical teachings of Torah, but the actual practical halacha, as Talga de Malka, the crown of the king. Halacha is Keser, is crown. Shinar is gematria Keser. So it's something that deals already with halacha. And what did they do? What do these people represent? It says they spoke Safa Achas, one language. What language did they speak? Lashon HaKodesh. The only Sefer that the Rambam wrote, and the Rambam wrote many Svarim, that he wrote in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Holy Tongue, is the Mishnah Torah. All those other works he wrote in Judeo-Arabic or in Aramaic, but the only Sefer he wrote in Hebrew and Lashon HaKodesh was a Mishnah Torah. Then it says Dvarim Achadim. They were all unified in what they spoke. The Rambam was criticized for this, but the Rambam does not cite dissenting views. It's only Dvarim Achadim. And then what did they want to build? An Ir or Migdal, a city and a Migdal. What is a city? A city is a location, geographic location, which contains many houses. The Sefer Yetzirah says that every letter of the alphabet is a brick. If you combine letters, it creates a house. 2 letters creates 2 houses. Av and Ba. It contains an idea. If you have many houses, you have a city. So a city is another way of saying sefer. A book is a city. So they wanted to build a sefer, a city, and the Rambam is a sefer, but what kind of sefer? Umigdal. It's a sefer with a migdal, with a tower. The tower, it says in Medrash, represents the Beis HaMikdash. The Rambam's work is the only work of halacha in his time that contains all of the mitzvahs, including the mitzvahs that relate to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Rambam is Ir Umigdal. Again, gematria. The word Umigdal numerically adds up to 83. Now you already know what 83, because you listened to the other talks, you already know what 83 is. 83 is the number of sections of the Rambam. And it's not just some arbitrary number. The Rambam mentions that he has 83 sections, but 83, as we heard before, is the number of illnesses that are cured through halech. Machla is 83, halechem and hamelach. Lechem is bread, the halachas of Torah. Hamelach is that which spices Torah, the pnimius of Torah, the inner teachings. The Rambam has both. So you have the word migdal represents the 83. Ir and Migdal together numerically adds up to Hamashiach. That when you have the Ir and Migdal, you have the Sefer of the Rambam that deals not only with halacha that we can do presently, but Hilchas Mashiach. That is what brings the Gilui of Mashiach, the revelation of Mashiach. Now, what is so special about the Rambam in relation to Mashiach? The Rebbe explained. What is, according to the Rambam, what is the objective of Mashiach in halachic terms? We know Mashiach is going to be a revelation of godliness. Mashiach is going to be a time when the whole world will experience peace. But in halachic terms, what is Mashiach? Mashiach, the Rambam says, the way the Rebbe explains it, and it's all self-evident from just learning the Rambam, is Shleimus HaTorah, is the completion of Torah, the integrity of Torah. Why is it, does the Rambam consider Mashiach one of the 13 principles of faith? Why is it a principle of faith? Some Sefer doesn't understand. Why is it a principle of faith? Of course you have to believe in Mashiach, it's in the Torah. But what's so special about it? So one of the explanations the Rebbe gave was that the principle of Mashiach is to believe in Shleimus HaTorah, that the Torah is perfect, the Torah has everything in it, and the Torah itself is made complete. Because right now the Torah is not b'shleimus. We can't keep most of the mitzvahs of the Torah because we don't have the Beis Hamikdash, we don't have all the Yidden living in the Eretz Yisrael. So Torah itself is deficient in a certain way, and Mashiach will bring shleimus to the Torah. What does that accomplish when you have shleimus HaTorah? There's a famous Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi says that Torah has the power to control nature. That if the Sanhedrin decided that they're going to make a year a leap year, biological changes, physiological changes in a person will reverse. If a person was at a certain age and something biological was supposed to happen, and then they decided to add another month so the person didn't reach that age yet, retroactively that person will experience a reversal of those biological changes. This is the power that Torah gives us. Torah's power is to change and to alter nature. But where do we find this power? It's the Sanhedrin. Why the Sanhedrin has that power? What's the key to the Sanhedrin having that power? A Stam Jew learns Torah, he's not going to change the biology. But what's so unique about the Sanhedrin? So the answer is the Sanhedrin has two characteristics. Number one, they represent the totality of Torah. In fact, the Gemara, Bavli and Yerushalmi, when they talk about the Sanhedrin adding another month, refers to it as Ki Mitzia and Teitzei Seira. That Torah comes from Tzion from Yerushalayim, from the Beis Hamikdash, from the Sanhedrin. They have the power to change nature, but it's not just the Torah. In our davening we say Mikadosh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. It's the holiness of the Jewish people that affect the nature of the world. We have the power, so Sanhedrin consolidates Torah and Yisrael. The Sanhedrin represents the totality of Torah. The Rambam in Hilchos Mamim says the Sanhedrin is Iker Torah Sheval Peh. They represent the Torah Sheval Peh in its totality. And they also represent the totality of the Jewish people. When you combine these two factors, Torah and Yisrael, you have the power to change the world, to change the nature of the world. And that's why Shleimus, the Rambam, embodies the Shleimus of Torah. The Rambam in his Hakdamas talks about how everything that the Chazal tell us is binding in every Jew until the end of the period of the Amoraim. Anything that happened later, when the Jewish people became dispersed all over, there was no unified consensus, doesn't have the binding effect in everyone. But when you have all of the Yidden coming together and uniting the Torah, they have the power to impose their authority on everyone. The Rambam takes that place. The Rambam's work is the closest you can get to the Sanhedrin consolidating Torah and Yisrael. We have all the Jewish people coming together, learning Rambam, learning Kol HaTorah Kula. We have the power to bring, that's the Shleimus HaTorah, the completion of Torah, the perfection of Torah that literally changes the world and brings about the Geula Shleima. I just want to conclude with another beautiful remez. Some of you may have seen, there's a famous saying, the Rebbe quotes many times, it's attributed to the Gra, it's attributed to some Sefer, and to a lot of other people, that in Parshas Bay, the Torah speaks about Moshe, the first Moshe. And it says that Hashem is going to bring miracles, Revais Moifsai Be'eretz Mitzrayim, in order to multiply my wonders in the land of Egypt. If you take those four words, Revais Moifsai Be'eretz Mitzrayim, it reads Rambam. I once thought, there's probably dozens of places where you could find four consecutive words that form the initials for Rambam. So on my computer I searched, and it's the only place in the whole Torah where you have four consecutive words with the Rosh Hashanah, Reish Mem, Beis Mem, Rambam. But it's much more exciting than that. Rabbi Weissman, the famous Holocaust survivor who tried to save so many Eden in the Holocaust, dabbled in this counting of letters. And he discovered that if you take the mem of the word Moshe in that verse, with Vais Mosai, and you count 50 letters, you'll get from a mem, you'll get a shin, then 50 letters later a nun, then a hey, spelling Mishnah, then there's a gap, and then the same pattern repeats itself with Torah, Tav, Vav, Reish, Hey, Mishnah, Torah. What connects these two words? 613 letters. And in the middle of that whole parsha, what does it talk about? It talks about bringing the Karban Pesach when? On the 14th day of Nisan in the afternoon. When was the Rambam born? I'll give you 613 guesses. He was born Erev Pesach, the 14th of Nisan in the afternoon. So his very birthday is inside that section of the Torah. There's a lot more. If you want to hear, I'll tell you some more. I think you want to hear. I counted the number of words, the way they're read with truck, from the beginning till the word Arba Asar, 14, and there were 365 letters. And from there on to the end, another 248. So the Taryag were divided into two sections. Then I counted, those are the letters. Then I counted the words, and there were 83 in each direction. Again, we see the number 83 coming up. But I've discovered a few days ago something very beautiful as well. It says, "V'hayo lochem l'mishmeres." This shall be for you as a mishmeres. You shall guard it. You're supposed to guard the Karban Pesach until the 14th in the afternoon. The word l'mishmeres has the Rebbe's initials, mem, mem, shin. The mishmeres is spelled mem, shin, mem. But also, mishmeres adds up to 1,010. What is 1,010? The gematria of the Rebbe's name, the three names of the Rebbe, the first two names and his last name, Schneerson, adds up to 1,010. The way the Rebbe spells Schneerson, without a hey. If you spell it with a hey, it's 1,015. What this is, the message over here is that the study of the Rambam, the Mishnah Torah that's hinted here, will be waiting for a time. When was the first Siyum? The Rebbe said the first Siyum should take place around the 14th of Nisan, around his birth, the Rambam's birthday, which is the 14th of Nisan. And the word lochem itself is the Rosh Tevis of Kemayim Liyam Mechasim. So the Eibusha should help that our study of Rambam should fulfill that which the Rebbe had in mind when he instituted this. It should unite the Jewish people and bring about the final Geula Shlema, when we will see the Shleimos, the completion of Torah, that will change the world, and it'll be a world of perfection, a world where there's no more kina, no more jealousy, no more rivalry, no more wars, of course, and no more famine. And it should be a world where we see the fulfillment of the last words of the Rambam, quoted from Yeshaya, the prophet of consolation, that Mola ha'aretz deis Hashem kemayim liyamachasim, the whole world will be filled with the knowledge of God as the sea is covered with water.
Thank you, Rabbi Greenberg. So the Rambam is called Mishnah Torah, which means the second Torah, which means you study the Torah Shabbat, the written Torah, and then you go to the Mishnah Torah, the oral Torah. So Rabbi Greenberg just explained a lot of hints where we find in the Torah Shabbat, how it's connected to the Rambam, the Mishnah Torah. If I can just add, we finished the Rambam in Parshas Truma. So Teruma, we know, is usually split into two words. Torah Mem. Torah, which was given in 40 days. It says, V'yikuli Teruma, you take me, you take Hashem through studying Torah. You can also read it as Truma, Torah Mem, Mishnah Torah. The Mem is for Mishnah and Torah. V'yikuli Truma, you will take the Mishnah Torah, you will study the Torah of the Rambam. All you have to do is take it. It's available, V'yikul, you just got to take it. Li. The Yikuli, what's the gematria of Li? 40. This year we're celebrating 40 years from the conclusion of the Rambam. In which year? Memhei, 45 in Hebrew. Teruma, Memhei, is 45. So some hints in Parshas Truma. Speaking about the Rambam study and bringing of Mashiach, another thing that we know brings Mashiach is the giving of tzedakah. So it's something to do in connection with the Siyum, is to give some tzedakah, which also hastens Mashiach. And we also want to do some thank you. We want to give a big thank you, a big round of applause to Rabbi Nandel and Mushki Brian for arranging this whole siyum. There's a lot of preparation involved to make everyone involved, for men, for women, for children, play, panel, a lot going on over here. And there's even a memento from this Siyum HoRambam, which has a little bit of the history and what happened 40 years ago at the Siyum HoRambam here in Buffalo. It's very interesting. If you could grab a copy, it's in the back. And everyone who's involved, want to thank. And we have here Ben Cohen, which is going to lead us with Simcha, concluding all 14 books of the Rambam is a major Simcha, major happiness. And in the month of Adar, which we're Marvin the Simcha, we're adding in Simcha. So after all the speeches, I'm sure everybody wants to dance and move around their feet. So we're going to go ahead with Marvin the Simcha. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we're ready for the next cycle of Rambam the Simcha.